Good afternoon, Katie Ryan. I'm here today to represent Carton being the European Association of Carton Board and Carton Makers. I've been quite heavily involved with the TICCIT programme. If you were here at the 100th conference, you would have been introduced to the programme by a gentleman called John Clark from BPIF Cartons. They are the UK National Carton Association, and they're responsible for promoting the programme within the UK. So essentially, what is it? It's a schools educational programme. It's aimed mainly at 8 to 11-year-olds. It was started in the USA several years ago by the Paperboard Packaging Council. And in 2018, the end of 2018, Carton Europeanised the material and launched across Europe. So last year, 2019, was the first year that we were running the programme. How it works, essentially companies such as maybe sheep plants in the UK appoint a TICCIT ambassador. So this is someone from within your business who is capable of running the programme, who is interested in marketing the scheme out to schools, and probably who is capable of standing up at the front of a big group of people, little people, and do a presentation. So first of all, you need to appoint that TICCIT ambassador, and this is what Steve is going to speak to you about because he is RH Fibreboard's TICCIT ambassador. The ambassador will approach local schools. They will arrange a date to run a presentation. Employees within the organisation will present to the children, and it's essentially about recycling and the environment. Every child will get to plant a sapling in a carton or a corrugated planter. They take those home, they plant it in the garden, and through the presentation, they will understand that the carton is going to biodegrade as the tree grows, as the sapling grows into a tree. And at the end of it, they're left with a nice big tree in the garden. The support material, so as I said, everything was Europeanised by Carton at the end of 2018, and there's a whole range of things available. Posters shown at the bottom. This is to help the ambassador to promote the programme within your organisation or with schools locally. A programme guide, this is an essential guide. It's full of how do I do it, what am I going to teach the children, how do I plant a sapling, which may sound really silly, but I've seen his presentation and he's going to talk to you about that as well. And I've got about 50 of these just at the back, so anyone who's interested in this at the end, please come and speak to me. I'll be here this evening, and there are programmes at the back. Inserts, crazy things, make your own planter guide out of a used cereal box, a planter cutter guide, so if you do want to run it and you do want to brand your own cartons, then there's a cutter guide there available for you. How do you look after the sapling afterwards? There's a letter that goes home to the parents. And very important, and I know something that Steve is going to touch on, is this photo release form. So if you want PR opportunities, you want to use photographs of the children, you need to get authority. If you want to go into the schools, you probably need to get authority as well. So there is a PowerPoint presentation, which is fully annotated, it's fully customisable. Again, I think Steve is going to go through some of the pitfalls and some of the changes that they made at RH Fibreboard in order to run the presentation. There's a short promotional video, which is about 55 seconds long, so it's social media ready, so nothing to stop you getting started with it. Key for the people in mainland Europe, it's available in, all of this is available in French, German, Spanish, Italian, Dutch, Turkish, Polish, English, and we're just about to release the Swedish as well. So most countries are covered, that there is support for them. Just a little bit about the figures. So as I said, the programme was started by PPC in America. It started about 10 years ago, and to date, they've actually run the programme with just over 115,000 children. So that's 115,000 trees have been planted in the US, thanks to this programme. Last year, that was 17,000 in the US. This is the first full year that we've run it in Europe. We had just over 50 projects. That's pretty much one a week. And we planted 1,200 trees. So 2020, the year of the tree. This was a school in Turkey, so the 23rd of December, so the day before Christmas Eve. The headmaster of the school decided that he wanted the entire school, 250 pupils, to be involved. So he got the ambassador to come in, talk to 16 teachers, who were then certified as ambassadors. They went into their classrooms, they delivered the programme, and they ended up planting 250, so 125 bay trees and 125 olive trees. And the feedback from that was absolutely excellent. Again, an absolutely excellent opportunity for PR locally, for yourselves, local businesses. These are local schools. It's up to you to go and find the schools. Great opportunity. You may recognise same shirt? There's a familiar face at the bottom there. So some of the feedback that's come from people who run the programme, there are some fantastic PR opportunities. It's a great programme to run. TICCIT. It's easy to implement. All of the teaching materials are provided for you. It's very, very low cost to run. I think the saplings cost about £1 each, and that's pretty much all that you have to buy. It helps you to build relationships with your local community, which I think is very important for local regional companies. The presenters seem to enjoy it. We'll find out. The teachers definitely support it, and the kids absolutely love it. And a new tree gets planted by every child, so it's positive. And breaking news, last Tuesday I was fortunate enough to go to Brussels with Tony Hitchin from Carton, who a number of you may know, because the programme, or Carton with TICCIT, won the European Paper Recycling Award 2019 for information and education. And there he is with the Swedish MEP, who was in support and was on the panel, Angelica Christ, who a number of you will have met at the 100th conference, and there's the award. So please recycle the presentation. It will be available to you. Please pick up one of these programmes at the end, and you'll see there are details there for support if you need to find out any more. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Is this working? Everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So I'm an ambassador, apparently. So yeah, I've gone from sales director to ambassador, and apparently it's only taken 4 school visits. So that's quite cool. But I actually probably am more of a trainee ambassador, and certainly a pre-millennial trainee ambassador as well at that I've learnt today. So TICCIT, we've had the brief introduction. Thank you, Katie. We really learnt about TICCIT at the last SPA meeting from John from the BPIF, and Sean, the MD of RH, turned to me and went, we really should do that, which actually means I really should do that. But that's fine. But where I've got involved is really, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of debate about plastics and environmental issues with packaging companies. And my eldest daughter, she's coming up to 14, and she said to me, so Dad, you work with a renewable, sustainable resource. You work for a company that produces that. And I'm like, yes, I do. And she's like, well, isn't that convenient? So, and I think the point she's trying to make is actually that it's not proactive enough for me to be doing that, to just be saying that. And actually something we're all going to have to learn really is that as the years and the decades go by, okay, the pressure's on the plastics, but it's coming for the paper industry as well. And we're all going to have to get a lot better. In terms of the resources available, just before I go into that actually, my experience with presenting to children, I've been a Sunday school teacher, a youth worker. I've done some work with Roundtable as a media officer, and there's a lot of children's charities involved with that. I've done a bit of fitness instruction, and I've been a school governor as well. So it is fairly comfortable. It is much more comfortable than talking to you guys with small people. So that's where I've really got on board with this. The resources, you can go to the BPIF Carton's website for all those things that Katie was talking about. You can email me once you've spoken to that nice chap who's going to give you lots of love, the employment place. By all means, you can give me a ring as well, and I can talk you through some of how to run the programme. And the Woodland Trust is an absolute must, because that's where you'll buy your trees from. And also, knowing children like I do, they are certainly going to ask you questions about those trees if you go ahead with this, so you do need to furnish yourself with that information. So, the BPIF editable presentation, in a nutshell, that's what it is. It starts with how to plant a tree, a little bit of information on what the different trees are, then it goes into paper making, and then it goes into carton board, as you'd expect, because it's that industry. And at the end of the presentation, it touches on plastics and recycling figures. So it's a really good framework. It's really good, it's editable, but with corrugated, there's a different issue with it in the fact that we've got to go one level further. So that, I'll touch on that a bit later. I'll come to that in a few minutes. So it starts with an introduction. It's really important that if you're presenting to children, it's really important that instead of presenting, that word really should be interacting, and you should make it a conversation. You personally introduce yourself. I introduced myself as the sales director of the business, actually, not an ambassador, but maybe one day I'll do that. Introduce your business. The best way to do that is to give them something tangible. So take a box along, let them pass it round, let them have a look at it. And just really introduce anyone that's along with you at that point. And get them, look at their classroom, see what projects they're running and ask some questions. They're basically just smaller versions of us. They like to be shown a bit of respect, and they like you to also be a little bit silly at the same time. But it's really important that you get on that level and not feel like you're talking at them. And really, we then move on to the Q&A on trees. Now, the start of the presentation is fantastic. BPIF and TICCIT have done a really good job at getting this right. Kids love information about trees, they love nature. There's bits about the rings and what that all means and the oldest tree in the world. And you'll find that part of the presentation actually takes quite some time. The reason being is because they're continually asking you questions, you're continually feeding back to them. So by the time you get to, I think it's slide 3 in the presentation, you've got some more interactive information about what lives in trees, and they love all that. We found that certainly after the first presentation, about 20 minutes had already passed at that time. So at this point, we threw in a couple of extra slides and told the kids that basically, obviously, goldfish and giraffes live in trees. And that was really just to get a reaction, because if you wouldn't have got a reaction, you pretty much know that you've lost your audience. If you get a, no they don't be silly, that's ridiculous, or if you get laughter, then you know you're okay to continue through. It's not a problem if you don't get that reaction, it just means that you have to fast track quite substantially. And we had a laugh with it. We told them that giraffes obviously live in trees and they've got long necks so they can eat the grass and all of that. So, concentration test is done, all being well. That might actually be impacted by the time of day. The first class that we did was really, really difficult. It was literally just after lunch. And a kid's lunchbox basically consists of chocolate, sugary fruit, and in the main, white sandwiches. Now, white bread is basically sugar. So if it's too close to lunch, they're going to be absolutely gunning for this. They're going to be full of energy and wanting to crack on as quickly as possible. If you've left it a little bit after lunch, the blood sugar has dropped, and you're at the point that actually you're really trying to get them to interact with you, and it can make it quite difficult. So my advice would be, if you're going to do this, try and do it in the morning, around about 11 o'clock. You can do it after lunch, but it'll really, I've got about 6 different versions of this presentation now. Just for each different set of circumstances. And concentration control, again, the more you interact with them, the more you talk to them, the more they're going to respond to that. Actually, the first presentation I mentioned about the slides not working, and children aren't really like you guys. If you got bored with me, you could just Google stuff or check your emails or go on Twitter. Children can't do that. They will basically sit and fidget and they'll sigh and they'll yawn, and we had quite a lot of that. And there was one kid who just got his face and just pulled his skin right the way back to his ears. And honestly, it looked like the worst experience of his life. So you can see that happening, and again, just fast track through. Once you've done the individual tree information, this is something that we changed actually. We get to the factual slides, and I know Andy talks about this a lot at the SPA. Is that actually forest area is growing, it's getting bigger. And the kids were fascinated by that. They didn't realise that was happening. And no matter how much you tell them that it's a great product, they still see cutting down a tree as a negative thing. Obviously, in some circumstances it is. For our particular business, FSC is really important. So one thing we noticed, and so far I think we've presented to over 120 children, and not a single one of them has known what the FSC logo is. They know, they recognise it, they've seen it on stuff, but not one of them have said, yeah, I know what that is and I know what that does. Excuse me a second. So, kids love a story, and it's very hard to explain what FSC is to a child. So we basically told it as basically a panel of very wise people with long beards, men and women with long beards, like Dumbledore just sat around and looking at all the forests and making sure that they're being well managed correctly. And you know, now that I know for a fact that some of those children are looking at those logos and understanding it a little bit more. And again, it's just that message of paper and corrugated being a sustainable product. I'm almost certain that although kids know about plastic and recycling, there's very little going on in schools about paper. So, this bit's the hard bit. These slides, this is the BPIF presentation and also ours. These slides down the left-hand side is the journey from paper to, the journey from the tree to paper wound on reels. You know, it's quite a long process to get to that. You know, we've got a problem in corrugated in the fact that we've got to go a stage further. We've then got to make board, and we've then got to convert, and we've got to print. And so, really, the best thing to do is go through this as quickly as possible. I suppose the real challenge for us is that we're all passionate about our products. And what we'd love is that if the kids went home and went, you know, Steve from Fibreboard came in today and he brought in a little 0216 modified die-cut E-flute 125 test box. I mean, it had an envelope base and not a crash lock, which I can understand because they ran it off the sample table. You know, it's not going to happen. What they're going to do is pick up that box and go, look, it's a box with a tree in it and we can put it straight in the ground. And it's still about cardboard, but it's being related back to something natural. So we have to be realistic when we're talking to children in general just about cardboard and packaging is what are they actually going to soak up from this? And from my experience of doing this so far, they're not soaking up how a machine works. You know, one of the presentations mentioned a die-cut machine. I mean, that's lost on kids. It's something that you need to sort of play around with really to get them to understand it. So tangible examples relating to their experiences is really important. So we did it as, rather than saying print press, we said, have you ever done those little potato splodgins where you get a bit of potato, chop it in a different shape or a sponge and put it on a bit of paper? That's effectively what we're doing. It was just, we're making a massive fuss over it and doing it 4,000 times an hour. Maybe a bit less than that. And the same with die cutting. It's basically just a giant hole punch. And then they understand that. They can relate to that's how cardboard is made and how things are cut. And obviously you've passed your box around already, so they can see that. Interest is harder because experience is limited. At this point, children at this age, which is 8, 9, 10 years old, they're not engineers as yet. They might have done a bit of Lego, but actually the first 8 years of their lives, they've got toy animals. They're very interested in nature, which is why they love the first part of the presentation. And they've still got that. You know, it's all about going to the zoo and fairground rides. And let's face it, we're not going to invite the kids around to ride the Maramatsu. So it's about getting that message across quickly and making those understandable comparisons. Make it participatory from the start. I've already mentioned that straight away make it conversational. Ask them what they know and ask them questions and expect to be questions. I had some brilliant questions. One child asked me what my favourite tree was. And I said it was a bonsai tree. And they said, you can't say it's a bonsai tree because there are several different types of bonsai trees, so which one is it? So I think I said, I quite like palm trees. And that was, well, that's palm oil, you can't do that. So it's absolutely brilliant. And we almost spent a whole session just talking about what trees I liked. It was fantastic. If you see a lack of concentration, fast track to the practical. And just more recommendations, talk trees more than plastic, and that's really important. That even in the paper industry, we still think that we can plastic bash, but it's ancient news to a child. They've been learning about this for years. They're far more interested in the trees and the paper bit because they already know. They're already tiny environmentalists. They've already done all this in schools about how bad plastic is for the planet. Limit the machine talk. And pitch it to the age group. So year 5 and 6, which is basically 8 to 9 or 9 to 10 years old, all the kids knew what photosynthesis was, so you can gloss over that completely. You can ask them about it and they'll tell you exactly what it is. It's slightly different with percentages, and there's a bit in the presentation about the fact that recycling rates in the UK are 82%, and then obviously the 18%. The 8 to 9-year-olds, they weren't really understanding of that. So you have to use the tangible example of if I've got 100 sheets of paper, 80 of them are going to be a packaging product in the future, and the other 20 are being thrown away. By the time they get to 10, they're well on it. They know exactly what percentages are, so each classroom will be slightly different. In terms of the practical, I feel like we've got quite a bit to get through, so I won't tell you how to plant a tree in a box. It's actually all on the BPIF website, and if anyone's interested, then do give me a call or drop me an email. Well, the one thing I would say is you have to do it outside. It is so messy. You've got a whole load of kids, 30 of them, all trying to get into this bag of compost, and it goes absolutely everywhere. And my assistant got it all in her hair, and it was just everywhere, so much better if you can do it outside. Check what the resources the school have got. From my experience so far, all you need is the trees and the compost. Most of them have got trowels, and if not, they'll use plastic cups and other things to help with the planting. And paper cups, plastic cups. Well, plastic, sure, if they're still reusing them, that's fine. Okay. Don't show the children the trees at the start. That was the first error we made. We showed them the tree. They saw them. They came into the class after their sugar rush and went, "Wow, what are we going to do? Tell us what we're going to do. Are we planting trees?" "Well, we are, but first I'm going to tell you all about cardboard." And straight away it's like, oh. And it's a bit like giving someone a roast dinner and then explaining how each different bit was made and not actually letting them have it. So they come, when you order them from the Woodland Trust, they actually come in a meat box. So we just, for the rest of the classrooms, we never emptied it. We just left them in it. And at the end, once you then pulled out all these trees, they were just fascinated by that and couldn't wait to do it. And definitely take someone with you. Lots of reasons for this. The first one is you're likely to take someone in your business who's otherwise going to be either stuck in a computer or stuck somewhere on a shop floor. And the person that we took got so much from it, Sonia, our designer, who designed the box that we used as well. It was just great. And the other reason is that you're going to be asked questions by these kids which you don't know, and you really need someone at the back to not just take the photos, but also to Google stuff. Because if you go in front of someone claiming you're an expert or an ambassador, that's what they expect you to be. So on consent, there's a really grey area. So this is actually my daughter, Fee. So I've really put this up because I'm proud. But there is another issue with this, is that schools have their overall policies of consent. So you can send them the forms and they'll sign it and say, yeah, that's fine, we've got a consent policy. But the problem is the individual classes have policies. So you still, even though you've got that consent form, you still have to talk to each individual teacher and say, am I okay to take photos? In one particular class, and this was my daughter's class actually, they said that basically you could take the group photo, but you couldn't take the individual one. So, and a lot of schools, and something I've learned from when I was a governor is, you'll see in the press, you'll see a lot of nativity photos, because parents and carers are almost expecting that to make it to the paper. But anything outside of that, like a TICCIT project, which is thrown onto you, 4 weeks before, they're just really nervous about what's going to end up on social media. And it's been like that for, well, really since the whole baby P thing came out and the safeguarding issues. It's really difficult. And we took probably 300 photos, and we've probably only used about 15 so far. I've given consent for a photo of my own daughter, but actually, if I put that on social media, I'm probably breaking the school policy. So it's a really grey area, and it's something you must check out if you're ever going to go into schools and want to use them for social media. And again, consent forms, it's an obvious thing really, but each school will have a different specific policy. So getting interest is quite difficult, partly because of the consent and the safeguarding. I was talking to someone earlier, and they said that actually, going into schools, they think that you're after something. I suppose we kind of are. But if you can get the key person, which is normally the head. Now, schools have to put the name of the headmaster on their website under LEA law. It has to be there. So it's relatively easy to get the information of the head from that. The other person to go to is the KS2 lead. And the reason they're important is they're basically, for Key Stage 2, they're almost like the group leader of teachers. So they're very much ground level, so they're going to be very, very encouraging of bringing this kind of project into the schools. If you try and go through the office, or you try and go to some of the NQTs or different teachers, they're not going to be quite so interested. And we found that the KS2 leads are definitely going to be more amenable, really, and more willing to have you in the school. Referral. I mean, most of you probably know a teacher or a parent that's got a child in a school. It is easier just to ask them. And, you know, on the school run, if the parents are going to the teacher who's going, oh, I know someone who can come in and talk to you about trees, and actually, you know, the kid gets to take a tree home. And, you know, going in that way is absolutely fine, and it's probably easier. And research the school topics. So by looking at websites, class pages, you can find out which projects are ongoing. So if there's one on sustainability, it's an ideal time to ring the school and say, look, we're doing this. It's not about plastic. It's now about paper and cardboard, and we'd like to come and talk to you about that. So general comments, definitely do your research. They love information. They love information about trees, and they love facts. You know, they love to know how many trees there are in the world, and we had to Google that very quickly. I can tell you there's 3 trillion, and I can tell you that half of those are in the tropics. I can tell you that the tallest tree is 115 metres, and it's a redwood. The oldest tree is 4,800 years old, and actually I said to the kids that it's 4,800 years old, and that's when the Egyptians were around. Some girl went, the Egyptians are still around. And then another child piped up and went, I think he means ancient Egyptians. So yeah, they're very clever. And tree knowledge. So the actual trees that you're planting are probably going to be silver birch because they're the cheapest. It's about, not including time to do it and all of that sort of resource, it's about £90 for a classroom of 2 classrooms. So it's not a big expense, but it's so valuable to do. But you know, you're going to bring in a silver birch tree and they're going to go, tell us about silver birches. So generic information, the fact that there's 300 different insect species living on them, woodpeckers like them. In this country they're decorative, but in Spain and other countries they're used to make furniture. So all of that kind of information is stuff that they're really going to soak up. And you'll definitely need Google, because you'll be asked things that you just don't know the answer to. So other points, take your products. You know, give them some cardboard so they know exactly what you make. Take a dustpan and brush, that's really important. And actually, some of the teachers are quite clever. The kids that can't be in the photos are the ones that are quite often sweeping up the compost. So. And demonstrate how to use your box as well. So when you give it to them, show them how to make it up. And that was actually one benefit for it not being crash lock, was the fact that for an envelope base, they had to sit and make it up, and they quite enjoyed that. And write a letter of thanks after you've done it. So why do it? It's an opportunity to link to the community. It's quite hard to link cardboard to the community in this particular way. The local supply, local engagement. So you get a little planter information sheet that can go home with the parents. So we put our company logo on it. And you know, we're supplying a business, our biggest customer is just a mile away from the factory. And I know for a fact that that planter has gone back with the child, and they've, you know, some of our contacts have seen that logo on the planter and gone, oh, so you've been into the school. So it's really important. Your literature, again, I've just mentioned that, it enables promotion and saturation. So you're getting your name out into areas that might not be directly related with customers, but they do make their way back there. Employee engagement, taking someone with you is just absolutely brilliant. And it just takes them out of their day-to-day work for a couple of hours. And the best thing is that this is all new information for the kids. They're not often focused on trees and forestry. It's very much plastics, and it's in the sea, and it's bad. And you know, actually some of them went away learning quite a bit about that. And the appreciation, you know, you've pretty much got every child coming up at the end saying, oh, thanks so much, Steve, thank you for this, we really appreciate it. The teachers appreciate just sitting there and getting their heads down for half an hour, and same thing. That appreciation doesn't, I probably need to warn you, it doesn't make it onto social media, it doesn't make it onto the newspaper articles, because they're too nervous really to be doing that, especially because they know that there's going to be photos associated to it. So I've yet to find a school that's going to do that, but you do get some quite nice messages and some good feedback. The only thing I wanted to finish on was, on Friday, when I came home from work, my daughter said to me, "Oh, we had wet break today, Dad, and we didn't know what to do." So we decided to go around the classroom and look for that little FSC logo that you told us about. And we found it on maths books, we found it on exercise books, we found it on this, we found it on that, but we didn't find it on the paper towels. So we're going to talk to the teacher about that and see. And you know, that's what we're really trying to promote, is that, you know, going forward, you're actually potentially going to be changing purchasing behaviour in a family or several families by doing that. So it's an all-round fantastic project. I hope you didn't get too bored, and I hope you'll consider doing it. Thank you.